The months and weeks leading up to free agency always has speculation, but for the Ravens, there is one name that seems to be getting the most speculation right now, and that is Titans running back Derrick Henry. We talk about if Henry could come to Baltimore and so much more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens. We are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host here with you, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, and we're coming to you from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, thanks so much for being here on this Thursday, making Locked On Ravens your first listen. We're free and available, all podcasting platforms. That includes an audio form and video form. So on YouTube, if you want to hit that like button, the subscribe button really helps out a ton. Audio form, you want to follow along there and subscribe. It also helps out a ton. Same show, audio and video. We're 5 days a week of Ravens content, even in the offseason. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus for any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We have former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver and a Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail, back with us in the house, talking Ravens and talking about what the Ravens can do to hopefully get their coaching staff and roster back to the promised land, which is the Super Bowl. Q, the Ravens fell short. We all know that. Now the next step for Baltimore is figuring out who stays, who goes, who comes in, who's different. A lot of storylines, even though we're a couple weeks away from the official start of free agency.
Yeah, this is the silly season, as I call it. I really like it, though, because – well, partly because of you, because of the fact that we have forged this off season of guessing and figuring out and projecting ahead and trying to be crystal ball. Like I was like, at first I was fighting it, but I was like, you know what? My boy KO, he's into it. He sees it. He likes to figure it all out. I'm jumping aboard. So with that said, yes, free agency, it is here. This is where, you build your team. And every year is a different team. Every year is a different mindset. My God, last year we went through it as far as Lamar Jackson. I think every episode that we had leading up to the draft was Lamar-centric. And, I think even the one time when we tried to do an episode that wasn't Lamar-centric, it turned out to be Lamar-centric because salary cap wise, you had to figure out who, what, where was going to get a piece of the different pie that EDC had to cut up. And it got back to Lamar again. So this free agent period started off with kind of a sort of a bang, and that, obviously Nelson Aguilar got re-signed. So that was a good thing. But otherwise, by and large, man, it's now here comes all the guessing and all the agents throwing out some information to get teams to kind of, hey, oh my God, so-and-so is going to pick up so-and-so, so we better go ahead and throw out this money to him. And the fun begins.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're aboard for it. And I know, again, we don't touch off-season talk during the regular season. So now that we're in the off-season, now you're able to fully jump aboard with me here. Yeah. So I'm glad about that. But even during the trade deadline, Q, we had kind of talked because that was potentially a midseason acquisition. Could the Ravens make a move? Could they not? And the big name that everybody was talking about was Derrick Henry. There seemed to be a lot of smoke in terms of Henry potentially being traded to the Ravens. Now, of course, we know that didn't end up happening, but Derrick Henry's a free agent now. And it seems pretty likely at this point that Derrick Henry's not going to return to the Titans. Feels like he wants an opportunity to go win a Super Bowl, and he's getting up there in age as well. So in terms of, we've talked about it, Q, in terms of, I hate using the word shelf life because I don't think it's the right word to use, but in terms of running backs, Derrick Henry is 30 years old now, and what this position has been in terms of it being devalued, that is quote unquote seen as old almost for that position, even though Derrick Henry still is one of the better running backs in the NFL. Now, the Ravens are in an interesting situation because we know Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Dalvin Cook, they're all free agents. Keaton Mitchell got injured. He tore his ACL in the later part of the season in December, so it's unclear what his timeline is going to be coming back from that injury. So you have Derrick Henry out there, and then it's actually a pretty deep running back class this offseason. It's Henry, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems like for where Derrick Henry's at in his career and what Barkley or Jacobs could be demanding on the open market with this being their second contract, Henry seems to be the guy where if the Ravens wanted to swing for the fences at that position, you bring him in. Now, Baltimore right now only has right around anywhere from $3 to $7 million in cap space. They're obviously going to free up some of that with some other roster moves potentially, like cuts, restructures, whatever it may be. But do you see value in the Ravens maybe investing $8 million per season or $7 million per season, even $10 million per season in an older running back, or would you rather see that money spent elsewhere?
Yeah, this is a real tough one for a couple of different reasons. Just from a pure football standpoint, the Ravens, towards the end of the year, obviously they're the number one rush team, but we saw in the AFC Championship game that they had like success, but they just never really stuck to that success when it came to running the football. And obviously the elephant in the room was the 15-yard carry that Gus Edwards had, and then that was it. But if you got a guy like a Derrick Henry and you put so much attention, what we call in the box, but you also got a guy like just the dynamic capabilities of Lamar Jackson, now you put that in the box. Number one, you can still give it to Derrick Henry, and he's going to go ahead and get some yards up the field. But then number two, you also got to take the chance of Lamar Jackson's going to out-leverage you, and now he's down the sideline for a big play. I think that is the allure of having a Derrick Henry. But you got to also pause on that too, because you got to get through the season. You got to get through a space where, teams are going to be trying to take their shots and their hits on him because they know he has a lot of tread on his tires. So that's something that I would be a little bit cautious with. But it is a necessary evil in that, they run the football. They are a run football team that have explosive capabilities under Todd Monken to get it out to playmakers on the outside. So no question about it. The other thing is that, when it comes to salary cap, when it comes to money, I mean, one of the biggest things that we got to recognize is the fact that the running back position has been devalued, but then there's a gluttony of running backs that a la Keaton Mitchell that you can get that really count almost nothing against the cap, and they can be productive right away. So those are some of the gambles you got to play with when it comes to whether or not you feel, Derrick Henry is he going to, take a team-friendly deal and, have it be a scenario where he recognizes he's in the twilight of his career, and this gives him the best chance to make the playoffs and go deep into the playoffs and potentially win a Super Bowl. Those are questions he and his agent are going to have to answer. But I think at the same time, if two can tangle and they're in negotiation talks, I'm all for Derrick Henry. I don't see that'd be a problem.
No, I don't either. And one of the crazy, you talk about some of the tread that Derrick Henry has on his tires. Some of these carry numbers, I'm looking at it right now. It is unreal. Let me do this math quickly. In 4 of the last 5 seasons, Derrick Henry, his lowest carry total was this year at 280 in 4 of the last 5 years. His career high was in 2020 when he had 378 carries that year. In this stretch I'm talking about, he also had 349 carries and 303 carries. So I don't think if he's coming to Baltimore, he's going to be expected to be a 300 carry guy, because the Ravens and most of the NFL, honestly, are moving more towards the look. You can have a 1A running back, right? Derrick Henry would be your best running back. But I think you also have to have other guys around him, like you talked about with a Keaton Mitchell whenever he comes back. Obviously, Justice Hill had a really strong year last season. You want to rely on those guys and not just keep putting the ball in Derrick Henry's hands every single time. But as it does stand now, with all that tread on his tires, he came in the league in 2016. He has 2,030 career carries in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons as an NFL running back. So would you be concerned with that, you know, with the way that he's been
How
used?
many games did he miss each year, or did he play complete seasons? How many complete seasons did he have?
He had, I'm trying to remember. So they made it 17 games in 2021, right? It's been 3 years since that happened. I assume he played all 17 games last year. He missed one game in 2022. He missed, how many games is this? He missed about 8 games in 2021, played in all 16 games in 2020, missed one game in 2019, played in all 16 in 2018, all 16 in 2017, and missed one game in 2016. So I think he's missed right around 10 to 15 games in his entire career. Does that change anything for you?
That's pretty remarkable because of the fact that he, you know, is a big running back and has a lot of space where you can kind of, you know, tag at him and get at him. But it shows that he has some level of elusiveness, and he's not really taking shots that are like knockout shots. He's delivering a lot of punishment. So, yeah, the tread is there, but the durability has certainly shown itself. Now, again, it's the running back position, and heck, Keaton Mitchell, he didn't even last an entire year. You know, he came into camp, had some injuries. Boom, he gets healthy, and what happens? Gets injured again. So it definitely, you know, you got a fast, you know, dynamic runner compared to a power back. One guy is just only missing a game a year, whereas another guy is out for the year and he hasn't even gotten started in his career. You know, I think a lot of it, there's a lot that goes on when it comes to, you know, just how you take care of your body, how do you manage your load during the week. I'm sure that's going to be of a strong concern and interest for Derrick Henry if, in fact, they do have those conversations with the Ravens, because I think one of the things the Ravens do a good job of is that wellness. They are concerned about it. They put it as their priority, unlike other teams where you have to go outside the building. The Ravens have it all inside the building.
I don't know if you've seen his workout videos, Q, but they are of a different animal. I mean, he's doing all this crazy stuff and, you know, hopping on weights with other weights and doing all that stuff. So he's a workout freak. But this is a guy that, I mean, you look at just his stature. He's 6'3", 247. That's what he's listed at right now. Him and Lamar Jackson in the same backfield would be, I think, an almost unstoppable duo if both of those guys are healthy. And Henry, I think there's a misconception about people who don't necessarily watch them play all the time. You mentioned the elusiveness that he has, Q, and I agree with you there, because he is not just a north-south runner despite his frame. He has ability to go east and west, juke guys out. Also, an underrated receiver out of the backfield, too. He's taken plenty of screens. You know, we know that 99-yard touchdown he had a couple years ago against Jacksonville, just making guys miss. So he's a multi-talented, a guy who has different levels of skill sets. So I think he'd add a lot to the Ravens. And coming up, we're talking a bit more about Derrick Henry and also getting into just how good the Ravens free agent class is in general. Stay tuned, plenty to talk about on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and this next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes you'll need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week, and with free agency coming up for the Ravens, I think that this team absolutely cannot let Justin Madubuike leave the building. It'd be an absolute disaster if they did. 13 sacks this past season in a contract, he's going to earn a lot of money. That's for sure. But with the talent that he is and with how hard interior pass rush is defined, the Ravens cannot let him out of the building. And therapy can be different for everybody. Most of us have bigger problems in our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail. And Q, again, I think a lot of the conversation about Derrick Henry right now It's about, one, the position of running back and just how valuable it is versus another position that I think has maybe increased in value, like a quarterback, let's say, or a wide receiver. Do you want to spend the money on a running back, or do you want to draft a guy in the middle rounds? I think there's that graphic, I don't know if you've seen it, of the last 10 or 12 or 15 Super Bowl champions, and the running backs that have been on those teams, the starting running backs, the past two have been Isaiah Pacheco with the Chiefs, who was a 7th round pick, and I think cost the Chiefs $720,000 and $700,000 these past 2 seasons. So do you want to invest that money? And actually, I played this game yesterday on the show queue by myself. I'm going to play it a little bit with you two here today. But Spotrac has estimated contract values for players and teams. So I did it with the Ravens and their guys, like, just Madubuike, Patrick Queen, and all that as well. But in terms of the Titans and Derrick Henry, as I'm pulling up Henry's chart right now, I think Henry's valued right around like $8 or $10 million per season, maybe a 2-year, $20 million deal with 13 guaranteed is what I saw on social media. Would you feel comfortable giving Derrick Henry that contract with the player that he is, knowing that you might not be able to re-sign a guy in another position or bring in another depth piece in another position with that signing?
Yeah, that is concerning. Obviously, from an offensive line standpoint, pardon me. Obviously, with an offensive line standpoint, you're looking at where is the value? Is the value with guys on the team that were young, developing players? Who are the guys that are going to be coming out of the draft to kind of help solidify that? Because that, to me, is really the biggest elephant in the room is the offensive line. And if I have a plan, a game plan going forward, sure, then I can kind of consider, all right, Derrick Henry, there's some good money that we could spend right here, because the ones that we're allocating towards Derrick Henry, we have pretty much, a smaller piece of the pie for some good quality guys like the Pachecos for the Kansas City Chiefs. You'll have that on your offensive line. So that's kind of how I would look at it. Even in the fact that you look at last year, you look at Odell Beckham Jr., who, he had a fat contract, and he, I think, leveraged it well, deservedly so. Is Eric DeCosta going to be like, all right, I think, the team would have loved to have had it where he would have had 70 to 80 catches with those, that type of guaranteed money. Or you would also be looking at least over, 9 to 10 touchdowns. So I think production-wise, are they looking back on what OBJ did or didn't do and say, are we going to, pay a lot again for a upper tier veteran, but is he going to fall off the cliff? Are we paying for his past performances or current and future expectations?
Right. And that's a good way to put it, because again, guys can't stay in their prime forever. Nobody, no player can do it, regardless of how good they are, how good they were in their prime.
Is undefeated.
That's right. That is 100% correct. So when you're talking about the running back position, I think it's okay if the Ravens bring in Derrick Henry. Now, I think that you have to be smart with the money, though. If Henry thinks Baltimore is the best fit for him, I think they can maybe work out a deal that might be a bit more team friendly than what Saquon Barkley would get or Josh Jacobs would get. But I think those guys would be a bit too pricey for what the Ravens can actually afford to spend at running back right now with their free agent class, which we're going to get to that in a second here. But I think if you sign Derrick Henry, that has to be it at running back. You can't bring back Gus Edwards. You can't bring back J.K. Dobbins. You can't bring back Dalvin Cook. I think you draft a guy in the middle rounds, and that's your room. It's Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, the guy you draft in the middle rounds, and then when Keaton Mitchell comes back, he essentially slides in for that guy, and you have a 3-headed running back rotation there, and that's what it is, where you can maybe backload the deal. If Derrick Henry gets a 2-year contract, you can backload that deal to where there's an out after this upcoming season and the cap hit is lower in the first year, so maybe they can do that as well. But we're talking about this here because the Ravens do not have a lot of salary cap space to work with currently, and they have quite a talented free agent class that is set to test the market. Now, CBS Sports put out an article, it was a list of the top 100 free agents, and the Ravens on that list had 6 of the top 60 guys. Justin Madubuike was 4, Patrick Queen 26, Jadeveon Clowney 32, Kevin Zeitler 38, Geno Stone 48, and Odell Beckham Jr. was 60. I think this Q is one of the most talented free agent classes the Ravens have ever had, if not the most talented free agent class they've had. I mean, how rare is it to have all these guys have breakout years, their final year of their rookie contract, veterans who some people thought were never going to be able to play to any sort of high level again. They all ball out. And now they all come together as one giant, really good free agent class.
Yeah, I think that was what made last year so cool and so unique. Was that it's one thing to sign them, and that's all well and good, but you still don't know the inner locker room chemistry, and you had that last year. You know, a lot of times people just look at the money and look at the production on the field. There is a line of a fine line that you walk. The words I'm trying to say is there's a fine line that you walk of how can that guy fit in with our culture, what we do, so it results in a good flow and team chemistry, you know, when crunch time comes. I think they had that last year. It was so cool to see Marcus Williams not being able to go and Geno Stone really just coming in and doing extremely well. It was so cool to see how Zay Flowers, a young rookie, is, you know, literally saying that, man, hey, I learned how to take care of my body because of Nelson Aguilar, and man, I'm doing things as far as route running because of OBJ. You know, these guys, they know how to foster an attitude of brotherhood, if you will. And that's important. You know, I've seen it so many times where it was the other way, where, yeah, you just get guys that are like, you know, hey, I got the money, I got the contract, I don't need you. Or you think that they think they're all that and they're really not. So it's a unique home run, to use that baseball analogy, that EDC and John Harbaugh hit. One, obviously bringing them in, and then two, allowing the locker room to develop and everything working the way it did.
I think it was the perfect storm. Guys developed in the way where, again, it took some time for Patrick Queen, took some time for Justin Madubuike, but they got the benefit of all of those guys because of what they were able to do. And again, it didn't end in a Super Bowl, but I think they crafted the roster perfectly, or at least as perfect as you could. I know there were some holes here and there, but it's hard. Not any NFL roster can have 0. You're not going to have 53 All-Pros. It's not going to happen. So I think Eric DeCosta did an awesome job with that. And coming up in the final part of the show here on Locked on Ravens, we're going to be talking a bit about the Ravens free agent class and playing that game I was talking about earlier, plus getting Q's free agent experience and what he was looking for and how the whole process plays out. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on this episode of Locked on Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonuses without any $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Obviously, there's no football anymore, no NFL games, but the NBA is in full swing, and the MLB, of course, is coming right after that. So you can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. So I'm a big number Nuggets guy, and Nikola Jokic, you really can't go wrong with him if you're going anywhere in terms of overs. If you're putting him in parlays, Nikola Jokic is a safe bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We're back. Our final segment of Locked on Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still talking with you on this Thursday. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Again, if you're new to the channel, welcome in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button on YouTube in audio form if you're new there. Welcome into you as well. Be sure to hit follow along there and subscribe. We're 5 days a week of Ravens content. Now, Q, I mentioned that game, and I do want to play it. We're not going to play the whole thing, as it took me about the full episode, and we do not have a full episode to spare anymore. But as I said, Spotrac has, market values and projected contracts and stuff along those lines. Now, the one that everybody's talking about, and we talked about him on yesterday's show, I talked about it, was Justin Madubuike. And it seems inevitable that the Ravens are probably going to place a franchise tag on him. He is their candidate for that. Now, there's obviously the chance that he could agree to an extension with the team before then. But Spotrac right now has him at 20.3 per season, average annual value there. Now, I had him around like 23 to 25, but Spotrac did something interesting. They had him on a 4-year, $81 million deal instead of a 5-year deal. And they actually have comparisons in contracts. So Quinnen Williams got $96 million for 4 years. Jeffrey Simmons, $94. Deron Payne, $90. Dexter Lawrence, $87.5. Madubuike, I think that with how good he was and the player that he is, he could probably earn in that $90 million range, which would put him right around 22 to 23 million per season. Do you think there's a chance he breaks 100 million? Or what do you think it is? Because I think what he does is so valuable and so rare.
Run stopper, disruptor in the passing game, the two-headed monster is what you're looking for from an interior guy. You listed all those other guys, but here's the one thing. The salary cap in general was not as high as it's going to be now. So that 100 million, it's not like, oh my God, the salary, what is it supposed to be projected at? 270?
I think it's like 243 to 250, I think is the latest.
My apologies. I'm giving extra. But that 250 number though, like, my God, man. If I'm the agent, I'm like, all right, bro, salary cap went up, more guaranteed money, let's go. And the Ravens, they recognize stadium authority is clearly upgrading the stadium, but from a cash aspect of things, now you're able to charge from a seat aspect of things as well as a suite aspect of things. I know from a WJZ perspective, they're taking the press box, which is right there, right behind the Ravens bench, and that 50-yard line, they're moving it way up into the upper tier so they can make more money. And if you make more money, then obviously from a salary cap aspect of things, it's one thing, but you now can go ahead and do those signing bonuses. And that's where, the secret sauce is at when you're able to do that signing bonus for guys like a Justin Madubuike.
And it's huge because I think, again, the way you can structure these contracts, for example, Marcus Williams, I believe the first 2 years of that contract, his cap hit was $7 million both seasons, if I'm not mistaken, but it was low. And now he has the 4th highest hit on the team. So that's kind of how you got to play, where one deal becomes expensive. You got to backload another deal and make that deal inexpensive. Then that deal will become expensive. And it's a full cycle there. And so a guy that, again, we can talk about guys like Patrick Queen and Geno Stone and Clowney and all that, but you've talked about Odell a lot this episode, Q, so I will play the game one more time with Odell. Now, Spotrac has him at $12 million, a 1-year, $12 million, $11.9 million contract. I would think it would be a little less for Odell, maybe like anywhere from $7 to $10 million on a 1-year deal, or maybe you go 2 years and you up that and you give him the extra stability there. I don't know. I don't see $12 million. Now, he provides more value than just the pure box score stats, and you touched on that. But I think, to me, Odell is a guy that might not be in that even double-digit range anymore. I could see maybe 7 to 9, with 10 being maybe the cap on that.
The one thing I think that we're missing is the word incentives. If he, can get incentive-laden contract, and then you're also looking at the fact that last year, this was new for Lamar, new for Todd Monken. Odell, if they, in fact, could come with an agreement, he would be in year 2 of the Lamar and Todd Monken experience, which that means it's only going to get better. And so he would have to roll the dice from the aspect of incentives, and can he, get some reachable, attainable incentives to help him, kind of offset some of the money that he would lose without all the guarantees. So I think, from a bigger picture standpoint, like a multi-year deal, give him a little peace of mind, help the team as far as being cap friendly. He already did them a solid as far as wiping out some of the voidables. That was really good. I think he brings an awful lot to the table for what the Ravens want and for what, the Ravens need as far as the locker room and the locker room chemistry.
Right. And whether that is in Baltimore or somebody else or somewhere else with another team, I think that he still does have value. But we talked about it a bit last week, Q. his production was not, $15 million worth of production on the field, but I think he gave you a lot that was pretty close to some of that stuff in terms of leadership. And again, what counts is what happens on the field, but he helped out other guys and he was a good veteran presence. So I think that for people who are saying, well, that contract was just a complete bust and you did nothing for him, I think he did a little more than nothing for the Ravens this season. But speaking of free agent wide receivers, Q, you yourself had a few times being a free agent wide receiver during your NFL career, once or twice. Right now, obviously, this is a Ravens podcast and won a Super Bowl with the Ravens, but you did not spend your entire career in Baltimore. You were obviously drafted by Minnesota. That rookie contract was up. You went to a couple of different teams after that. So just to give some perspective on what free agency is like from a player's perspective, obviously things have changed a little bit in terms of like the salary cap for one and how things are done. But as you were kind of going through that process, whether you were looking for your first contract, your second, your third, what was your mindset going into it and how does the process play out?
Yeah, so my first time around, I was the unrestricted free agent from my rookie contract in Minnesota. And that simply was, everyone thinking, oh, my God, this is going to be great. Similar to what we're doing right now. But I just remember a lot of the people that were around me were thinking it was just going to happen right away. And, yeah, they meaning teams, they go out for big splash contracts. And there were some big splash contracts. But at the same time, there was this long game waiting. I didn't get signed. I actually went to training camp with Green Bay. So I signed a very team-friendly one-year deal with Green Bay. Wound up getting traded down to Miami. When I was going through the free agent process with that phase, it was like I went to Kansas City and did a workout with Kansas City, went down, with the Washington, at that time, Redskins, with the Commanders, and I remember North Turner and I'm catching passes. I think Heath Schuler was the quarterback, but I'm catching passes and doing my thing. I went down to New Orleans and literally did a workout for them, but wound up going to Green Bay. Next thing you know, I'm being traded to the Miami Dolphins. So from a Miami Dolphins aspect of things, I spent a year there. I was like, all right, here we go. Boom, my time comes, my time goes. Literally, as I became a free agent, cool thing about it was here comes the New Orleans Saints again. Went down, visited, signed a contract, boom, done. They knew of my game from when I was a Minnesota Viking. So in Minnesota, I was torching the New Orleans Saints. And that's how it usually kind of works. Teams kind of like, this guy, he's really good. He's killing us. We need to get him on our team. But that's where it was cool because when you have new coaches, and we see a lot of them, and that's where, again, Mike McDonald comes in and Patrick Queen, I know his agent is going to be talking to the Seattle Seahawks. I promise you that. Why? Because coaches want to establish that familiarity and what their programming is all about. What does that mean? Well, there's a way I do things. So Mike wants a guy like a Patrick Queen who knows how he does things and can kind of be that liaison, if you will. And there is where, all these new coaches, hey, Keith Williams, we don't know. I mean, he could have a relationship with OBJ and, the Saints feel like, well, we got a team that can compete. He's going to be able to get the ball and maybe he might want to come back to his hometown, New Orleans. It's little things like that. You see coaches and everybody move. So Brian Billick was my guy. He comes to the Ravens, and then next thing you know, I'm sitting there like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go up and visit, Baltimore. I come up here to Baltimore, and literally, I think I signed a contract that weekend, I believe. So I came up and didn't leave. I left the Raven. And then that just kind of started my career as a Raven. So, when you look at free agency, when you look at being patient, you just don't know. Their coaching changes, their personnel, scouting changes, their injuries. There are obviously the elephant in the room is money, but even that, sometimes, last year, Steve Bisciotti was like, yeah, all right, we're going to pull the trigger. Nobody else is clearly willing to pull the trigger on Odell Beckham, but Steve Bisciotti was. Why? Because they had a long depth of relationship talk, and it wasn't just about football. He was like, you know what? I like this investment that I'm about to make in Odell. Let me do it. So it's the richness of the fullness of what we're seeing with free agency.
Right. Free agency is crazy. There's so much that goes into it, so much that goes on, both from the team and the player. It's an agreement, right? It's not one team going and saying, all right, you're coming to play with us now. It's no, the player has to agree. The team has to agree. A player can't, just force their way onto a team and say, hey, I'm playing for you guys now, right? It's both ways. It's both sides. So it's interesting how everything goes into it and how everything works with it. And of course, as we look ahead to the Ravens free agency this year in 2024, they're going to have to balance out, if Patrick Queen follows Mike McDonald to Seattle, like you talked about, Q, or the Keith Williams with a wide receiver like Odell, or maybe Anthony Weaver goes and takes an offensive lineman, or Zernard Wilson goes and takes a Ronald Darby or Arthur Millette from the secondary. So relationships are key anywhere, not just sports, but anywhere. But it's, when you look at it from a football perspective, if that's your guy, that's your guy. Billick was your guy. You follow him, and the rest is history there. So going to be interesting to see how the Ravens do things this time around. But Q, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for hopping on. Tell people where they can find you and what you're working on here. I know we're in kind of the low period of the offseason.
Yeah, so I'm 24/7, 365 when it comes to missile training and allowing people to maximize their efforts. What does that mean? Maximizing their movement efforts. I mean, from 7 years old all the way up to 84. From a family aspect of things, you can bring in your family. From an athletic standpoint, if you're, junior high, if you're trying to get into college, if you're already a collegiate athlete, I work with everyone. And that's the bottom line. And it gives you an opportunity to recognize what is true durability. There is training on that traditional sense of the word, and then there's durability, explosive training. That's pretty much what missile training is all about. So check out my website, missiletraining.com. And obviously you can find me on TV on WJZ. And we have our different weekly shows that I'll be on throughout the year.
Links to everything Q does will be in the description down below, so be sure to check him out. Check out his website. He does great work, whether it is Ravens talk, Ravens content, or obviously with his missile training as well. Everything. Q is a multi-versatile, multi-talented person, just like Mr. Derrick Henry. So there you go. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, if you're an everyday, if you're somewhere in the middle, thanks so much for tuning in today. As always, be sure to subscribe, follow along. Coming up tomorrow, we'll round out the week with more Ravens content. Stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.